Welcome, one and all. I am Mercury Black, friendly neighborhood lunatic, and today I am going to be discussing what I see as the commonalities between Christianity and high magic. Magic ranging from shamanism to high magic. Now, I'm going to be discussing the perspective. For anyone who's unaware, like any dog-headed man, serving the purpose of a bridge here. I find that among the community here, friends I've had, I am very comfortable with both sides. The magical, occult, shamanic side and the Christian side. So for anyone who doesn't know, I was raised Roman Catholic. I was an altar boy all through my youth. After going insane, I'm bipolar. Spiritual, mystical, shaman, and high magic. I got involved in all of those things. I find myself in a unique perspective because within both those camps, there is an element that distrusts the other. So not all Christians have a problem with magic. Not all magicians have a problem with Christians, but there has traditionally been tension between those two. And both sides have a fair point that the other side is dangerous. So the Christian perspective, and what I find interesting is people on both sides who don't trust. I know people on both sides who aren't fully comfortable with the other side, yet they trust me. So I've got Christians who ask me about magic because they're wary of magic. They would be wary of the average person involved in magic, yet they find me trustworthy. And the reverse. I know magicians or Wiccans that do not trust Christians and but do trust me. So they do both have a good point. The Christians will say, "Welcome, Chris. Good to see you." So the Christians will say tarot cards and all that. Excuse me. That collecting spirits, tarot cards, magic rituals are all very, very dangerous. And absolutely, they have a point. That can be very dangerous if used improperly. But when the magicians say Christianity can be very, very dangerous, they also have a point. It really doesn't matter which system you're working in. If you haven't done your shadow work, if you're claiming to serve a higher purpose and you're really being self-centered, you can take it horrible places. Christians have burned witches. Christians have massacred people. So there's plenty of problems on both sides and both sides' perspective on that. Now, this came to mind, as Nerdbird points out, because the last Lunatic Live I did, I believe it was Wombat Rob, who asked me to give some thoughts on magic. And I think I rambled on about alternate dimensions and the interplay of those dimensions, about taking thought forms seriously, blah, 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 which is a part of magic, but really I missed the simplest, most obvious answer of what is magic about, I think. I mean, I may have said it, but I really don't think I got to it. There is a fairly simple, obvious answer about what magic is about, and I see it as being identical to what Christianity is about. The simple answer is relationship. It's all about relationships. Now, if you're just within your own reality tunnel, you might think that's sufficient on its own without the telos added, but what you consider proper relationship involves what your outcome, like what your goal is, why you're developing relationship. So the telos of it is important. And for both high magic and Christianity, the telos is theosis. And so, as an example of why the telos matters, if you go look up pickup channels, how to pick up women, you'll get a lot of advice about relationships, how to interact with other people, how to interact with the world, and how to interact with yourself, what thoughts to have. with the end goal of hooking up with as many women as possible. And you'll see that that gives very, very different advice than what, Christ, for example, advised. But if you look at Christ's teachings, I mean, both magic and Christianity have all that pedantic shit. In Christianity, make the altar this many cubits by that many cubits, and make your robes out of this, woven with this. And there's all, the spells, the altar to set up, the prayers to memorize. But all of that stuff aside, if you look at Christ's teachings, it essentially comes down to relationship. Most of his teachings involve how to treat other people and also relationship with God. So Christ's teachings are about your relationships with other individuals, your relationship to the world, your relationship to God, your relationship to the angels, to the Holy Spirit, and with the goal of becoming one with God. Like Christ says, one day you won't call me master, but brother. The goal is to one day become a part of the body of Christ in Christianity. And so all of the instruction on relationships, whether it's relationships to others, relationships to yourself, relationships to God, all have the end goal in Christianity of becoming one with God. As far as I can see, shamanism, like all the magical practices, whatever they are, whether it's high magic or shamanism, is the same thing. And so I think I did talk during the live stream about when you get into magical practices, everything comes alive. But the point of all of that is, for me, high magic and my Christianity, all my mysticism, all of this fucking shit I do, you could boil it down quite simply to, it's about learning how to have proper relationships. How to have proper relationships with myself, with my subpersonalities, the shadow work, all of that is about having a proper relationship with myself. It's about how to have proper relationships with other people. It's about how to have proper relationships with the universe itself, how to have proper relationships with the different elements, earth, air, fire, water, spirit. It's about how to have proper relationships with lowercase g gods, angels, the spirit of the land. You begin to see absolutely everything is alive, and that you have a relationship to absolutely everything. You have relationships to your own thoughts and emotions, and ultimately your relationship to each individual aspect of reality is a subcomponent of your relationship directly to the Godhead, to God the Father, to the Trinity, to the source, to the now, to the all, to the whatever you want to call it. And so, as far as I can tell, that's the common thread between magic and Christianity. They're both about understanding proper relationship, and both of them have the end goal of becoming one with God, theosis. Okay, the rambling wheel in my head just stopped spinning. Does that mean I'm done? Because I did intend this to be a fairly short video, just to get the idea out. Or did that make any sense? So a couple people said hello and then just listened to me ramble. I don't know if you're still here. But if nobody writes anything in the next 30 seconds, I'm just going to wrap it up there with that simple point to get it out there. None of the spiritual or magical traditions are really all that different. It seems to me that when you dig down to the very base of all of them, it's about realizing we are not separate from all. It's about realizing that there really isn't anything but God here, and that our goal is to recognize that. And so it comes around to, isn't Christianity just a Tada trick? Oh, I don't know exactly what you mean by isn't it just a Tada trick. From a certain perspective, I'm sure you could argue that, but I certainly wouldn't say it's just that. Jesus resurrecting and all. I think Jesus's resurrection is something that is holographic, something that's fractal. Jesus's resurrection happens to everything, happens to all of us. Okay, Marvin says he gets what I'm talking about and he's looking forward to discussing this in depth. Yes, you and I will do a proper podcast about this at some point, Marvin. Okay, Chris says, talk more about the hesitations Wiccans have against Christianity. I'd be interested in specifics. Okay, if you want to hear shit from like the other side, and I understand both perspectives. Okay, all of reality, there is too much fucking information out there for us to absorb it all. We like to simplify and categorize things. We do that on all sides. It's not just with religion, it's with politics, culture, all kinds of shit. So there's too much to reality. We can't understand it all. We prefer to simplify things. So there's enough positive shit out there that Christianity has done that if you focus on all of that, you can think Christianity is this wonderful miracle. This blessing unto the world. But if you focus on all the worst shit that's been done in Christ's name, it can seem absolutely horrific. So some of the arguments against Christianity will be like, it's from the witch burnings, from like the Crusades, that a current criticism of Muslims is the sort of jihad type. They're trying to, there's an image some Christians have of Muslims that they're trying to take over the world, spread their faith by the sword. Christians did that shit, man. Like, Christians have slaughtered people. Christians did not treat the Native Americans here well. They did not treat pagans and Wiccans well at certain points. You can look at the problems with the Catholic Church involving child abuse. It's also a good point Alan Moore makes. He says that when you look pre-Christianity, when you're involved in pantheism, go all the way back to shamanism. The early shamanism is about the shaman, the person who's most in touch with the spirits, perhaps because they're a fucking lunatic, they were born schizophrenic or bipolar. So the person who was most capable of speaking to the spirits spoke to the spirits for the purpose of connecting the rest of the tribe to the spirits. And so initially, everybody was encouraged by the priest class, like the shamans originally, the equivalent, like what later the priest class took the place of. The point was to connect people directly to as many aspects of God as they were capable of understanding. You move forward as religions develop, the use of different gods within pantheons was a method for us to connect strongly to certain aspects of God. So you wouldn't mistake Zeus or Thor or Hermes Trismegistus or Tehote or any of that with God itself. You weren't worshiping them falsely instead of the source, but it was a way to get in line with a specific aspect. And as magical and spiritual traditions developed, where you developed like a priest class of some sort, like still, even though they were the experts on being connected, you might have the Oracle of Delphi. We had like the experts who would pass on the knowledge from the celestial realm. It was still very participatory. When Christianity stepped in, when monotheism stepped in, it came, and it didn't need to come along with this, but many times and places it came along with, we are the priests, the bishops, the whatever. We speak to God, you do not. It became God is only one thing. God is what we say God is. And it's no longer permissible to interact with the other dimension. You can interact with the other dimension if you're among the priest class. But even then, as this developed, it became more and more likely that what was expected was a one-sided conversation, where the priest prays to God and often is not hearing anything back. There's not a mystical element to it. But you certainly were not encouraged to have your own mystical connection to God. And you were not encouraged to explore ideas outside of that framework provided to you. And in many points, that was punishable by torture or death. So Christians have done horrible shit throughout the ages, but everyone has. Like, that's the thing here. When it comes to an ideology, when it comes to a religion, there is nothing that us malicious little fucking apes can't turn to evil and claim some kind of righteousness over. So all kinds of nasty ass cults have started from weird mystical and shamanic traditions, or Wiccan traditions, but there's also been some nasty ass cults that have been born of, I believe in Jesus Christ, and let me tell you what Christ believed. So that's some of a steel manning for why some on that side of Christians. Okay, so Spartanonymous says, in the jungle at least, the Ecuadorian shamans I met know about are all Christian also. Yes. What I was saying about certain magicians, shamans, Wiccans, or whatever, not trusting Christians, there's plenty of them that would consider themselves both Christian and magical, or consider themselves of a magical tradition, yet love and appreciate Christianity. Just like there's plenty of Christians who explore in the other realms, whether it's tarot, Wiccan, shamanism, yoga, fucking whatever, or plenty of Christians that stick to their Christian tradition, yet love and appreciate a variety. Okay, Chris is adding, so the masculine aspects, like colonization, dominating cultures, ex-doctrines, fundamentalism, rejecting other doctrines, rejecting the mystical, stuff like that. Yes, many people on the occult side see Christianity that way, as entirely embodying all of those negative aspects of masculinity. Absolutely, that's one way they see it. Now, on the other hand, a balanced view of Christianity should see it as very balanced. The divine feminine is there. The language of the Christian church is male-centric, but I mean, like the chaos and order, the logos and the void, it's still there in the, like, we put a lot of that onto the Virgin Mary in the Catholic Church to have her hold up the divine feminine, but it's also very much within the Holy Spirit. So a balanced understanding of Christianity should not see it as a masculine religion, but it is played out in a very masculine way in a lot of ways. And the Gnostic Gospels have it that Mary Magdalene was the disciple that Christ taught the most to, that she was the closest disciple that got the deepest teachings. And the Gnostic Gospels had that there were the men disciples and there were women as well, but that of all of them, Mary Magdalene was the favorite. According to the Gnostic Gospels, Peter did not fucking like that. He didn't think that was a woman's business, and he did not like a woman being taught things that he wasn't taught. According to some of them, when Christ died, it was actually the Magdalene that he wanted taking over for him. But that Peter would not fucking have a woman in charge of the Christian religion, so that St. Peter ran Mary Magdalene out, and that she ran away to France, and hid herself away in a cave, so Peter's people wouldn't kill her. And she lived out the end of her life in a cave in France, hidden away from everyone, and birds and squirrels and chipmunks and shit brought her the food she needed, and Christ was there with her. So she spent, like, not physically, but like the Spirit of Christ was there with her. So especially in the Gnostic Gospels, it leans even further towards the feminine and tells the story of St. Peter overplaying in hand. Okay, Two More V's makes the point. I highly disagree with this being what Christianity did, especially not when it started. You have to remember we began hunted in the catacombs. Part of the point of Pentecost was the Holy Spirit descending on us in a way to give every believer the direct connection to God. Just want to put it that way. And wrote this comment to the idea of priests coming along, cutting the relationship of normal people and God. Somewhere where there's so much history, there's been so many Christian priests, depending what you have been exposed to, and also depending what your natural confirmation bias is, because whatever we want to believe is the information we seek out. I see it as entirely reasonable and logical for anyone to come to either of those thoughts about what a Christian priest does or has done throughout history. Depending on your internal nature and depending on synchronicity and your environment, depending which times and places, which specific priests you've been exposed to the stories of, you can view it either way. So you're absolutely right, Marvin. There's been tons and tons of Christian priests, Orthodox priests, who absolutely understood Christianity is about theosis and relationship, and they absolutely taught to their best of their ability how to connect directly to God. But there's also been plenty and plenty of nuns and priests slapping rulers across people's knuckles and telling them to shut up and listen. But both, like, once you take in enough information on one side, which is driven by your confirmation bias and all these other subconscious programs, once you've taken in enough of that information, it will begin to seem to you like the only rational and logical way to view Christian history is the way you see it. And then you can end up with someone else polarized to the opposite end, also thinking the only rational, logical way to see it is how I see it. From my perspective, in neither case is their end result that is obviously logical and rational. It's because of what information they've been exposed to, what their natural confirmation bias is. So you're in a reality tunnel. Like, that you've locked yourself in a more limited framework when something seems obvious and like it's the only rational or logical conclusion, and you can't understand why anyone could see the other perspective. They have to be crazy or stupid or lying, because it's obvious that I'm right. The minute you feel that way about anything, you're trapped in a reality tunnel. And so if it feels obvious to you that Christian history is good, you're stuck in a reality tunnel. If it feels obvious to you, fucking anything. If it seems obvious and complete to you, you're trapped in a reality tunnel, it seems, from my perspective. Given our inherent what is inherent to us internally and our outer circumstance, there is a reason everyone sees things the way they see it. As ridiculous as some people's beliefs or understandings of the world will be to you, I think it's there, but for the grace of God go I. And Sam Harris would agree with that statement as well. It's, if you had been born in their condition and into the environment they were born in, you would believe you would be exactly what they are. And Chris says, Goddess Sophia was suppressed. Book of Mary Magdalene was. Okay. Spartan Anonymous says, it seems you link magic and shamanism. You really believe in magic? Yes. Now, the differentiation of adding the K is, and not everyone does this, but if you mean, okay, I believe in both. Magic without the K, I believe that exists. Stage magic, illusion, entertainment. The purpose that some people add the K is to say, we're not talking about that. We're talking about real magic. And yes, I absolutely do believe in it. Now, I am not arguing that I'm not crazy. I am crazy. It seems like I'm bipolar. It seems to me that, like in Joseph Palemy's book, Shamans Among Us, it seems to me that bipolar and shamanism are interrelated. That crazy people are crazy, like to an end. We're the ones designed to be the mystics. And so I am not claiming I know this objectively, though. Like, I'm not claiming objectively that magic is real. I'm aware. I do not know that I have a soul. Like, as an absolute certainty, I do not know that I have a soul. I do not know that there's anything to reality other than the 3D reality that Richard Dawkins would say life is limited to. I do not know if my consciousness existed before I was born or will continue to exist after. I do not objectively know if there is a God at all. I don't know whether we're all brains in jars. I don't know if any of you are real. There's no logical argument out of solipsism. It absolutely could be that I am the only one here and I'm hallucinating all of you. So it does come fundamentally down to I think, therefore I am, like Descartes. Although I think think even is the wrong word there. More like I am aware, therefore I am. The only thing I am absolutely certain of is that I am aware and I am experiencing this. Beyond that, there is no certainty to me. Also, there's no fucking one thing I believe. I have subpersonalities. I have different parts of me. I feel different in different moods. I absolutely have a subpersonality that, well, initially, when I first went crazy and all my subpersonalities like really amped up, I would have called it the atheist. I had an internal atheist that when it came out, it viewed everything through the psychological frame. It took all the mysticism, spiritual beliefs, all of it as utter nonsense and total insanity. Given the parts work, the shadow work, the work I've done to integrate myself, I feel that inner atheist is now more of an inner agnostic. It's still very much on the side of Sam Harris. It's more like Sam Harris than Richard Dawkins now, like that subtle difference within that atheist movement. But it really is, it's agnostic now, where it's like, okay, it's admitting it doesn't know that there isn't a God, but it still views the world through that frame. However, I've got way the fuck more inside me that believes I have a soul, that believes there is a God, that believes magic does exist. When I do the parts work and it comes down to it, it really is very much like Pascal's wager. If there is nothing to life beyond the grave, then at that point, what the fuck does anything matter? And I have no problem with that belief. Like Ricky Gervais's belief, Sam Harris's belief, that does not frighten me in the least. When I'm depressed, I love the idea of just blinking out and not existing anymore. And you know, that idea isn't being trapped forever in nothingness. Like some people imagine that nothing after death is terrifying because it's this black nothingness and you're all alone. It's like, no, nothing is nothing. There's no nothingness. There's no black void. There's nothing. It's like, it's not terrifying to imagine before you were born. So from that atheist perspective, who gives a fuck if we all blink out? Then it's just you live your life the best you can. And my inner agnostic has seen now through experimentation that even if magic is total bullshit and we don't have a soul, me participating in magic and spiritual practices helps me cope with my bipolar. It makes my experience of life easier and it makes me a better person to other people. So from a Sam Harris perspective, like there is a part of me that examines all my spiritual and magical practices through that lens. From the Sam Harris perspective of, okay, this is nonsense, but it's nonsense with a purpose that helps me cope with my own insanity. Much, much more of me really believes my archangel is an actual entity outside of me. More of my subpersonalities experience either my soul or my higher self, not as a concept that I'm choosing to believe in or claiming to believe in. When I talk about the astral realms, when I talk about alternate dimensions, entities, I am not talking about statements of faith. I am talking about things I have experienced. So yes, I very much believe in magic. The purpose of high magic is to shape yourself, to connect to your higher self, to the soul. It's theosis, the purpose of magic. A lot of people go to magic either to get power over others, to get money, or to sex. Those are like the three things you don't fucking use magic for. Go watch any old Twilight Zone episode about making selfish wishes. The magical statement of do what thou will, or in the never-ending story on the back of Orin, do as you wish. It is a misunderstanding to think that that means bend the universe to your will. Wish and will are capitalized there. And the capital is important. The capital letter denotes that it is your true will. It is your divine wish. So it's not about self-gratification that's ego-driven. It's about getting beyond the ego, discovering the purpose for which you were born, and living out your true will, your deep purpose. What did I start rambling off of? Hey, Martin. How's shit? And hello, Troy. Oh, hey. Wombat Rob's here. And hi, Kelly. Yeah, so for some reason this morning, it was you on the full moon, Rob, that asked me to talk about magic, right? Or am I misremembering that? But anyway, whoever it was who asked me about magic that night, it came to mind, and I didn't really remember my answer because I tend to let my live streams fall out of my head when I'm done. But I just remembered having a feeling that I was not answering the question properly. And so it occurred to me this morning, shortly after waking up. I thought, shit, the easy answer when Rob asked what's the point of magic was, the point of magic is to develop proper relationship to yourself, to all the components of yourself, proper relationship to others, proper relationship to the world, to the elements, to the spirits, to the angels, and ultimately with the purpose of theosis, of becoming one with God. That's, I think, a better answer than what I said the other night. And Christianity. All right, I'm going to take a look at what's been written while I was rambling. Oh, by the way, Marvin, I watched your talk with Jonathan Pajot yesterday. Great job. Awesome fucking podcast. So anyone who missed it, Two More V's was on Jonathan Pajot's channel. I think it came out a week or two ago. I just watched it, though. But they go through the album Pentecost for the Zombie Apocalypse and discuss it. Excellent conversation. Highly recommend it. Okay, Troy said identification with the structures and systems that develop in the wake of great mystics is to completely miss the point. Yes, but it's a way of missing the point some people require. That's missing the point, but I would also say that some people need to miss that point, and some people need to act on that misunderstanding for a time, and that to someone else at a different level might look like going backwards, because for them it would be going backwards to participate in that reality tunnel. Yet for the other person, it is actually going forward and it will lead them further, and that it has a purpose. Okay. Two more V's says Christians obviously did awful things in the name of Christianity, but it is possible to see if those things are are in line with Christian teachings. I think it makes more sense to become aware. Yes, and that seems obvious to you because of what you've experienced of life. You will, however, encounter people who, and again, it's not about the logic of what you're saying here. I'm not arguing your logic whatsoever. Some people have experiences, emotional damage, fears, some reason that their confirmation bias leans against that so strongly that their brain will alter all the information coming to them to hide the point you're making. Some people need to heal or go through emotional relationship experiences, have mystical experiences, perhaps have some sort of psychological breakthrough. But for many people, it's if someone has a confirmation bias that they are holding on to, they're holding on to it so strongly that they don't even think they have a confirmation bias. It may seem obvious to you that you can explain to them why they should see Christianity different. But if you focus on the logical, rational argument and don't have whatever experience it takes that will allow them to release that framework for a moment and listen open-mindedly, then you will just make them dig in deeper. Because if you have a self-defense mechanism, like say I am somebody who cannot believe that Christianity is good, it's my own emotional damage, it's whatever, I have that emotional reason, I have that confirmation bias, my brain is working hard to filter all of reality to match that. The more arguments that you present based on logic, rationality, fucking research, that will just make my brain work harder and harder to develop a better and better argument against Christianity. It will become like an arms race of details. And you can observe that kind of shit on social media, where even to leave religion out of it, like left, right of politics, anything where there's the two sides, you can see how sometimes someone will come along and comment, hey, here's the opposite of what you believe. And rather than that making the original person question it, it makes them dig in harder. And then you end up with two people like doing research to prove each other wrong and coming back with, okay, you said this, but I found this. If you observe that from the outside, you can see the confirmation bias working in action. Like the other person doesn't go and look up the article you looked up and read it for it to be true. It's like Jonathan Haidt explains. If you reference a book that proves the opposite point to someone, an article, a study, whatever it is, the person who does not want to believe that, the person with the confirmation bias against it, when they won't realize they're doing it, but their brain instantly is scanning that document for any reason to dismiss the whole thing. They're going into it looking for the smallest thing, and they'll be pedantic, they'll intentionally claim that something it isn't. You know, you can take words two ways. They'll warp it to make it untrue. They'll find any mistake in it and then be like, no, because the author said this, I can prove this is wrong, so I can throw the rest of it out. That's what our brains fucking do. And if on the other hand, Marvin, you observed another Christian being challenged by an atheist, and you said to that Christian, here's a book that shows you why that atheist is wrong, they will not go into that book with an open mind either. They will instantly be scanning for things they already agree with so that they can accept the sum total of it and just say, yes, I was right the way I was. I don't need to understand the other perspective. The other perspective is stupid or evil or insane, whatever it is. Okay, so basicality is focused intent. What your intent is really makes or breaks you. Yep. Same thing with how you use a chainsaw. Your intent really makes or breaks you. You can cut down trees to fucking build an orphanage, or you can cut up orphans with a chainsaw. And yeah, Rob, magic and spirituality really are intrinsically valuable. It serves some purpose. Like, even if there's no God, no afterlife, blah, 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 it's all like the atheists say, we are still wired to take comfort in ritual, to, psychologically, a good relationship. Okay, Dr. Orrin Amitt, I forget which podcast, because I've talked to Orrin a few times. But when I was talking to Orrin once about my archangel, Orrin said the studies show that if somebody believes there is a divine entity, whether it's God, whether it's Jesus, whether it's an angel, whether it's a spirit guide, whether it's the great eagle, if somebody believes a divine figure is protecting and helping them, it is beneficial for them psychologically. And so the studies don't look at, are angels and this shit real? The studies looked at, what effect does believing in angels have? If you believe in other entities that are like against you, that will have a negative effect on you psychologically, and it will have a negative effect on your life. Like, if you're living with that belief that there are, like, whether there's entities or not, when somebody believes there's evil entities that are against them, that does have a negative effect on them. And when people believe that there are entities that love and care about them, it has a positive effect. It's beneficial for their psychology, and they are better able to act in the world, like, according to the metrics that somebody like Sam Harris would use. It makes you more able to achieve goals. It makes your personal relationships better, blah, 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 blah. So whether my archangel is real or not, the studies show, and I think like my own life shows that, very much like the worst version of me. Like, if I did not have the family I have, and if God, whether God's a delusion, whether my angel is a delusion or real, if it wasn't for my family, especially my parents and the divine, I would be one of those, like, I would be a homeless person involved in criminal activity, ranting and screaming about shit every time I'm manic, going psychotic on a regular basis, in and out of the mental hospital. I'm tired of talking. I'm not sure if this stream's over or if I'm just going to sit quiet for a moment and then start talking again. Anyway, moment of silence. Enjoy your fucking now. All right, Rob said something excellent. I find that magic has deepened my sense of wonder and possibility for life. Not only that, but it has deepened my respect for compassion in the natural world. Excellent point. And that makes me think of something Manly P. Hall said that I really liked. Manly P. Hall, another Canuck, but he, devoted his life to comparing various spiritual, magical, mystical religions, blah, blah, blah. And one thing he said was, when you're examining what somebody's thing is, their religion, their whatever it is they're preaching or teaching, it's like a lot of us have a tendency to look at the teachings to see how much they know, to see what they can talk about, like the actual ideas, to decide whether or not what they're talking about is a good idea. I didn't explain that well. But anyway, his point was you don't do that. What you do is you look at the person. Somebody claims to be some great teacher or discovered a fucking angel or some mystical tradition that's really helped them. He said, first thing you do is you ask everyone what they were like before they involved themselves in that tradition, before they met that angel. Then you observe what they're like. Not what they know now, not what they talk about. Like you could do it by muting reality and just watch them. Has taking on that practice made them kinder? Has it made them more honest? Has it made them more charitable? Has it made them more devoted to service of others? Has it made them more loving? Has it made them happier? Has it made them more of a blessing to the world? Or as they've learned this, have they become greedier? Have they become arrogant? Have they become, manipulative in a self-serving manner? And so his point was, you look at the effect it had on the person to decide whether or not you want to listen to them. Because say they can spout all kinds of fucking, like the devil can quote scripture to his own end. You might meet someone who can quote every fucking Gnostic gospel, the entire Bible backwards and forwards. That can be used to the other end. Like if they're a nasty person who knows everything about the Bible, it will not be good for you to listen to that person. Like, unless this is some sort of dealing with that kind of shit spirit, like, unless you have in mind to expose yourself to that on purpose. On the other hand, if you encounter someone whose teachings make no fucking sense to you at all, like, what do you mean, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And what the fuck do you mean if a tree falls in the woods is there? It's like, if it sounds like utter nonsense, yet you look at the person and you're like, shit, they have so much inner peace. Everybody loves them. I wish I could be like that person. It's like, well, maybe you should listen to what they're saying, even if it sounds like fucking nonsense. Okay, and two more V's says, very interesting and insightful. How should one treat that confirmation bias if one can't address it? That's just it, is you can't. You got to leave that up to God. Or, okay, rather than trying to treat their confirmation bias, what you do is create an environment where when they are ready to move out of their own confirmation bias, you have created as accepting an environment that is possible. So rather than focusing on changing the person, focus on creating an environment that's very accepting of others' limitations, very loving, very open, so that someone feels comfortable to let down their guard around you and say, wait a minute, what if what I believe isn't true? Like, that's a very vulnerable thing to do that. It's terrifying to do that shit. Like with you, imagine I asked you for an hour to give up believing in Jesus and Christianity, take the other perspective. Like, honestly, let go and try to fall into that perspective. It's like, that's terrifying, isn't it? Make an environment where if somebody opens up, that you don't come at them with, see, I told you so. Don't push them back into it. Make an environment and like acknowledge, yeah, it's really difficult to step out of your confirmation bias. That's really, and I wouldn't be pushy personally. I wouldn't jump on that and go, yes, come believe what I say. I would just go like, yeah, there's time. Well, I mean, obviously be honest, but for me, I might say, yeah, there's parts of me that doubt all my beliefs. It's scary to be in that position. So yeah, I think it's about making an environment where if they choose to, or if God removes the scales from their eyes, but that's out of your hand. Okay. Carlo asks, do I get the type of content like Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Haidt from reading books or watching videos? I've read Peterson's stuff and watched videos. I've only watched Jonathan Haidt. But also, like, when I talked about confirmation bias, I did not learn that from Jonathan Haidt. It was when I was in isolation and totally removed from the world, when I was doing what I later found out are mindfulness meditations and things like that. It was in isolation, and it was studying under my archangel. So it was me talking to imaginary friends and me spending time alone. Like, I had 2 years with no internet, no phone, no car, never saw anyone except my parents, who dropped off my supplies. When I was in isolation and I was examining myself, I one day realized the confirmation bias thing. I was like, holy shit, when I look at an argument, because it was like, you do enough mindfulness meditation and you start noticing the subconscious shit, the stuff that happens in you you're not aware of. You do enough fucking meditation, you start seeing it. And I suddenly observed in myself, like, holy fuck, when I look up this issue, my brain is instantly scanning. Like, when it's a right-wing perspective, because obviously I'm naturally a fucking leftist, like, the what you're born into, because people on the right are people high in conscientiousness. They tend to have a natural respect for authority. They feel that's an inherent value. And people on the right are lower in openness. People on the left are really high in openness, low in conscientiousness. And there's some people just born with, it doesn't seem like respect for authority is a virtue to me. I'm a natural born leftist. I'm not orderly. I'm not conscientious. I'm massively open to experience. And it has never seemed like a virtue to me to obey authority. And it seemed obvious to me that people on the right were wrong. They were stupid fucking sheep and they couldn't think for themselves. That was the issue where I first observed my confirmation bias. I was like, if I'm taking in info from a right-wing source, I realized that my brain was scanning for any reason to dismiss the entire article. I realized that if I picked up something from a left-wing perspective, my brain was instantly scanning for a reason to agree with it. That's how I discovered confirmation bias. And I now realize there's a complete logical, rational argument to both sides of respecting authority. Like, the conservative right-wing perspective is, hey, you're not fucking smarter than everyone else in the fucking world. Authority's there for a fucking reason. It is too difficult to, like Peterson says, you can't figure out how to be a human being by yourself. You're going to have to respect authority. And there are people who, it seems to me, just are fucking born to follow authority. That's what their brain functions better with. They're not like Daniel Schmachtenberger. They can't figure out their own way to evaluate all the information in life. That's too much for them. There's people who join the army just for that. It's like, you get told when to get up, what to do. You're given very specific instructions of what a good soldier is, and you can just be a good soldier. You don't have to worry about any of this fucking, what is life? What is a good person? Recognize now that that's valid, that it's necessary that some of us are like that, and that, like, there's a real fucking argument to be made there for who the fuck am I to question, the church's authority on anything, or this person's authority on anything. But I was naturally born with that reverse, with that feeling of, fuck you, I'm not doing it because you said I have to do it. I'll do it if I choose that it's the thing to do. It seems to me like, yeah, that emotional. I realize now it's not obvious, and I realize it's not right. But it seemed obviously right that I should make my own fucking mistakes, not other people's mistakes, or I won't learn anything. If I believe A is right, and my teacher, my parents, the government, the church, someone else says A is wrong, if I act out A is wrong, I'm not learning. Like, even if A is wrong, but I deep down believe A is wrong, and I push it down to obey authority, I will not learn why A is wrong. Also, then if A is fucking right, I just got that question wrong on the test because I didn't trust myself. I copied somebody else's answers. So it seems to me like when I am within the reality tunnel of my own ego, it seems to me obvious that I don't want to obey authority. I want to decide for myself what's right or wrong, and that I should do what is right in my own eyes, even if it means punishment from authority. So it gets pushing up to that like martyrdom shit where, no, fuck you, I'm not doing that. You can keep me locked up. And I even encountered that. I was tested with that. The first time I went insane. So I got hit by a bus and then went completely nuts and I had a total psychotic break. Like, I was connected to divine shit, but I hadn't done any of my shadow work. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I was totally trapped in my ego. So when I had that psychotic break, I got a few things right. Like the fact that God has a purpose for me, the tell the truth no matter what. I got a few messages clearly, but then I layered all kinds of my own bullshit onto that. So I was the typical lunatic ranting incomprehensibly about God while not sleeping, not eating, fucking wasting away, believing I have fucking superpowers and don't need to eat or sleep at all, and that I'm in control. So I was your typical fucking, the first time I got locked up, I was ranting and raving shit that does not make sense. But I did understand at the core of that God had a purpose for me. Tell the truth no matter what. And I would not vary from that. And the first time I was locked up, there was a psychiatrist there who, the moment we saw each other, we did not get along. She hated me. And she kept trying to get me to say that God wasn't real. And I wouldn't do it. I'd be like, no. And she was like, you're not getting out of here until you... Because I was like, no, I am not fucking crazy. God is real. I'm a fucking, Messiah, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay, you're going to be in this fucking mental institution until you admit you're crazy and that there's no God. And I was like, no, that's evil. So we're back and forth for days. And I remember the date because of the date. And then it was June 6, 2006. So the date was 666. On 666, that psychiatrist comes into the room and says to me, listen, you're either going to admit that God isn't real, or we're giving you electroshock therapy in the morning. You have today to decide. And I freaked out. I was like, you're telling me you're going to torture me with electricity if I don't say God isn't real? And she's like, this isn't torture, this is therapy, but yes, you are getting electroshock treatment tomorrow if you don't say God exists. And I went on this giant rant. You can't do that to me. I want to call my parents. And she wouldn't let me make a phone call. I said, you can't do that to me. She said, yes, I can. You're institutionalized. You're ranting about God. I can give you electroshock therapy. And I demanded to call a lawyer. They wouldn't let me make a call. I demanded to call my parents. They wouldn't let me make any phone call whatsoever. And then I really started I started yelling about religious freedom and religious rights. And I was like, when I get out of here, I'm going to every church to tell them that, you said I have to say God isn't real. And at that, she backed down a little. She said, okay, you don't have to say God isn't real, but you have to admit God doesn't talk to you. And I was still like, no, fuck you. God talks to me and I can't lie. And she was like, you're getting electroshock therapy in the morning if you don't change your mind on that. And I said, if you give me electroshock therapy, whenever I get out of here, I'm suing this place. There's no way you're allowed to do that. Yet I thought she could do it. Like, she told me she could. I spent the rest of the day trying to make a phone call. Nobody would let me. I talked to every orderly. I talked to the security guards. And even the ones who liked me and were sympathetic, yeah, man, that's fucked up. I'm sorry she's doing that, but I'm just the security guard or I'm just the orderly. This is totally out of my hands. And the other, doctor I spoke to just wouldn't get involved. Was like, I can't go against what she said. I can't get involved in this whatsoever. So I, that night, thought I was getting electroshock therapy in the morning. She came in the morning. She looked like she just stood there and stared at me for a minute. And then she said, so, Are you going to admit that God doesn't talk to you? Or am I taking you to get electroshock therapy right now? And I was fucking terrified. But I was like, I am not saying God doesn't talk to me, and I am not approving of this electroshock therapy. She just stared at me for a minute. And she said, okay, we're going to go now. And I just stared at her. And then she walked out of the room. And she didn't come back in. I found out later that day from a different, later that day, I finally talked to somebody who let me phone my parents. When I phoned my parents, what I found out was the day before, when she told me she could give me electroshock therapy, she couldn't. She needed my parents' signature on that. She threatened me with it before talking to my parents. Then when I was demanding that I should be able to call my parents and they wouldn't let me, she phoned my parents and asked for permission to give me electroshock therapy. And thank God my parents said no. She tried to talk them into it. So she didn't actually have the right to give me electroshock therapy. But my point being, I don't know why I started rambling on all that. Yeah, what the fuck did I start that story for? But anyway, I guess the point of it is when I was confronted with imprisonment and electroshock therapy, or saying that God doesn't exist, or even that God doesn't talk to me, I've always stuck to my guns in those situations, was the point. I don't know why I was telling that. I hope. Oh, okay. Kelly makes a good point here. I cut trees for a living. I've never done it like for a living, but yeah, I've done some logging with my dad. So I cut trees for a living, agreed that intent matters. Trees see it as transition, not death. Most of them, maybe I'm just nuts to feel they want to hold me. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And you say, I see it as magic. Yeah, I don't. Like, whether it's with cutting down trees, using any plant, or whether it's killing animals. I don't think a cow wants to be a cow forever. Just the same way as I don't want to be stuck in this fucking meat suit forever. This is a part of my spiritual progress. I think animals and trees and shit understand they're here for a purpose. I think they enjoy participating in the circle of life. I think that when, old native hunters killed an animal and loved the animal and thanked it and thought that the animal actually wanted to be food and wanted, like, to me, when an animal is eaten by animal's soul has some connection to that person, has some connection to human experience. I think some trees are growing with the telos in mind. Some trees know what ship they're going to be a part of. Like, no, you know what I mean, in quotes. Some trees want to be a table. The tree that was cut up to make Christ's cross knew it was there for that purpose. Okay, Nerdy Bird's referencing something I said a long time ago. I have your situation, Merc, yet without family and no criminal element, was recently homeless again, though. Yeah, it's like the difference between how I'm doing and how you're doing. It's not like I'm a better person or I'm trying harder or anything. I've had better fucking support. And actually, probably, I expect that I would be worse. Like, if you took me, not like, yes, if I was in your place, I'd be exactly as you are. But it's like, take away the support that I have and make me homeless for the length of time you were homeless. Like, and especially the old me before all my integration, it's, yeah, I would very quickly be criminal and digging in deeper and creating a very big problem for the world. The Moon Tarot is here. Nice to have you with us, sweetheart. And Kelly said, agreed, actions, not words, show true motives and experience. How far behind am I? And my lovely Ani is wishing everyone well. And she's not putting out content at the moment because I've been keeping her busy with other things, but she will be putting out content soon. So if you're interested in tarot readings, subscribe to Tribes of the Moon Tarot. Oh, and if anyone wants a personal reading, she's currently doing that. She's not putting out videos, but she is doing readings. I don't feel. Can you put the link to your Instagram in chat, honey? I'm going to make you a. This will allow you to post links. Don't do it yet. You can't post a link, I don't think. As just. Okay, you're a moderator now. So can you post a link for your Instagram in chat? So if anyone's looking for a tarot reading, she doesn't charge anything up front. So she'll give you a tarot reading, and then she'll let you know where you can donate. If you didn't find it helpful, don't fucking donate anything. And if you do find it helpful, you can make a donation afterwards. But she doesn't charge anything up front. So she's the perfect tarot reader for people on the fence. If you're like, what's up with this tarot shit? Is it worth it or not? I don't want to waste any money. Discord, I'm Mercury Black. That's where people can send me direct messages. So if you're looking for a private session with me, if you want to arrange a podcast or anything because you have your own channel, or if you're looking for a tarot reading from Ani, you can message me directly on our Discord. Also, we have already once worked together with someone. So if anyone's interested in booking a private session with the two of us, if someone wants a tarot reading from Ani where I'm present, and where after the tarot reading, I add my insight to whatever it is that has come up. Me and Ani are working together as well. I forgot to offer that previously. But so write to either me or her if you're interested. That's really unethical to coerce you like that, almost evil. Yeah, and so symbolic that it was on 666. Actually, what would be interesting? Next time I talk to Jonathan Pajot, I should ask him the symbolism of that. He likes talking about how symbolism happens, and Pajot has interesting takes on things that I usually haven't heard before. Like his video on 666 isn't what you might expect if you have a stereotypical idea of the Christian perspective. So the next time I talk to Jonathan Pajot, I should tell him that little story. Hit by a bus, went psychotic, ended up in the insane asylum, and on the date of 666, I was threatened with electroshock therapy if I wouldn't say that God doesn't exist, and ask him what symbolism he sees playing out there. How far behind am I? Okay, I'm not that far behind. Oh, fuck, my bladder's distracting me momentarily. Enjoy your now. I was about to start by saying I'm back. I think I usually do that. If I leave for a minute, when I come back, I say I'm back. That's fucking stupid. Why do I do that? If I say anything at all, it shows that I'm back. So Carlos says, I always question authority. Help it. Now I'm extremely anti-left because I reject their unjust mandates and power. Currently, right-wing people are very liberal and tolerant. Yeah, that is weird. Like, traditionally, the obey authority is what comes from the right, and the left is like, fuck you, don't tell us what to do. Also, traditionally, it's the right, where like, you can't say this, you can't say that, don't say fuck, don't, and it's the people on the left who are like, we can say anything the fuck we want, fuck you. But recently that seems to have gotten oddly reversed, at least in America and to a certain degree in other places. And I get such a limited amount. I don't really follow politics, and actually it's the intellectual dark web are the reason I am aware of to the degree that I am, of what's going on in the world. Before I got into Jordan Peterson, I was really, really, really cut off from the news. I was interested in, Manly P. Hall and Alan Watts and music and art and shit. I was not following current events. I didn't know fuck all about politics. I'd never heard of SJWs or any of that shit. And I first came into, my first access to the IDW was Jordan Peterson. And I was looking up in-depth psychology and looking at, and it was because I was very, very much into High Magick at that point. And I was looking at, how depth psychology and Carl Jung's work relates to High Magick. And I came across one of Peterson's old lectures called Depth Psychology or something. I was just like, holy fuck, this guy's awesome. And I went from that to the Maps of Meaning, started watching that. And then I went to, but when I was searching Jordan Peterson, I saw the Jordan Peterson confronts and I saw that kind of thumbnails. I completely avoided that shit for the first 3 months that I was into Peterson. I saw that he was involved in some sort of political bullshit. I didn't give two fucks about that. I didn't want to connect to that energy at all. And so I watched his Maps of Meaning. I watched his Introduction to Personality. I even watched both versions of both because he did Maps of Meaning twice and he did Introduction to Personality twice. It's, once he goes through Lion King throughout the semester, once he goes through Pinocchio, blah, blah, blah. But I loved that shit so much that at a certain point it was like, I couldn't take it. I had to watch some fucking interview. Because I was only watching him giving lectures. And I was like, what the fuck? I want to see him in an interact with another person. So it was just because I was so interested in Jordan Peterson that I started watching his other shit, like his podcasts and interviews. That's how I found out that the left and right have oddly, that the right have handed off to the left the idea of shut the fuck up, don't say what we don't want you to say, and do what we tell you to do. Also, though, it was through Peterson that I was exposed to, Jonathan Haidt, Daniel Schmachtenberger, Jonathan Pajot, all of that shit. Yet the reason, and even and by that point, I was aware that it was my confirmation bias driving my interest in the IDW. So what I liked about Peterson was in those lectures, he was discussing from a very, very grounded position a bunch of the shit that I discovered in mysticism. And that's why I found him fascinating. In fact, at first, I wasn't sure if Peterson was a closeted high magician or not, because there are some people who are into magic and they're fucking freaks like me. Like, you're not 2-bit surprised. Or there's some people, they dress like a fucking wizard or whatever. But there are people that you would not think, like advertising executives, CEOs, lawyers, that kind of person. There will be ones who are involved in high magic and they don't tell anyone about it. Like, nobody outside of their magical order. They separate their mundane and magical life and keep it a complete secret. At first, I couldn't tell if Peterson was one of those. And I was like, it almost looked to me like he was a closeted high magician who was intentionally putting up a mask of that sort of scientific, psychological explanation. Like, for instance, because it seems so deeply important to me, the fundamental axiom that you have to aim at the good. You come down to that fundamental: is the game worth playing? Is God good or bad? First, you have to make that decision. The next logical thing is tell the fucking truth no matter what. Even old magical traditions or mystery schools, before you could even enroll in it, you had to go out and live an honest, good life for 3 or 5 or 7 years, were often like the numbers. But it was like, if you went to the fucking mystics or the high priests or whoever and wanted to learn the secret techniques of interacting with the divine, the first thing they would say to you is, okay, go live well for X number of years. And they expected you to be hardworking, charitable, honest. And it's at the end of that time period, your family, your friends, your employers, your customers, whatever, the people you interacted with over the last 3 years, they would question them as to whether or not you were an honest, reliable person. And you had to show first that you were aiming at the good and that you practiced in telling the truth before you were even initiated. And so it seemed to me like Peterson could have been that. Could have been this high magician who was like, look, everybody needs to know these principles of magic, because even if you don't believe that's how reality works, it does seem to me that that's how reality works, whether you believe it or not. Your thoughts fucking matter. Your intent fucking matters. And when you lie, you put yourself at odds with whatever aspect of reality you lied about. When you tell the truth, you are putting yourself in allegiance with reality. When you tell a lie, you are putting yourself at odds with reality. And I think that is fractal and holographic in every dimension. Like, it's psychologically true, it's true sociologically, it's true metaphysically, mystically, spiritually. So that's why I got obsessed with Peterson at first. He had the same axioms as me, but he was coming at them from a different side, and he had different reasons for all of it. And then, Jonathan Haidt, same thing. I had observed confirmation bias in myself. I didn't know that was what it was called. I had observed it in myself, and he had the big explanation. Or Sam Harris, his argument on free will. That was something that when I discovered it during my isolation, I found terrifying and very difficult to grasp. I eventually became comfortable with it, and it became a part of my overall understanding of reality. I thoroughly enjoyed Sam Harris for both his free will and then again his book online. So my interest in the intellectual dark web was not me overcoming my confirmation bias. I was aware that my interest in them was me going along with confirmation bias. Yeah, I agree, Rob. Thank God for my parents. They have put up with so much shit over the years, and they have been so fucking like supportive and like loyal and just like amazing. Like, yes, there were times they were doing shit that I thought was against my best interest, and there have even been times my parents have made mistakes. But even the mistakes they made were out of love and thinking it was the right thing to do. All right, Joel says, even if my awareness is annihilated when I die, the spark which began my awareness will begin to exist in a baby after my death, therefore reincarnation. That seems absolutely possible to me. I'm not entirely sure what happens after I die. What I am the most sure of, and again, it comes down to just the Pascal wager, is what I'm the most sure of is just that there is experience beyond this life. So whether that's reincarnation, whether it's continuing to experience different dimensions of reality, whether it's hell, purgatory, layers of heaven. I am the most sure that the spiritual journey continues. Reincarnation makes sense to me, but I can also imagine a system where you continue in other dimensions and don't reincarnate physically. But I do often see things through reincarnation. There's a part of me that really, it feels I've lived many lives before. And the part of me that steps into the reincarnation frame, my goal within that frame is to be fucking done with it this life. That this is the last time I have to reincarnate. Okay, Brian says, I think the deal breaker is when someone says that they hear the voice of God, and definitely if one says they see God. However, in Florida, someone has to try really hard to get committed. Depends on, it depends on the person, depends on the priest, depends on the psychiatrist, like for instance, the psychologist, whatever. Like for instance, Dr. Amate, in one of the podcasts we did, again, I don't know which one, said he's very, very careful with if somebody comes in, as a psychologist, if someone comes in talking about seeing a ghost, talking about, talking to angels or whatnot, while he's a psychologist and he's entirely aware of the perspective from which that is all like part of the mental illness, he says he's also very aware that there is more reality than he can see. He's very aware that he doesn't know if somebody is seeing a real ghost or is talking to a real angel or not. So you can encounter psychologists, psychiatrists, priests, all sorts of people who will take seriously you saying you talk to God, you experiencing miracles. There are other people where the moment you tell them that, they're certain you're insane and they're ready to commit or dismiss you. You still listening, Sally? Nerdy Bird is excited you're here and says hello. Yes, you have taken over the chat. Now, that is not why I'm going to wrap up. I've been rambling for almost an hour and a half. So as I was reading these last messages, I was just checking to see if there was anything to respond to, and I was going to wrap up. So it is a coincidence, Nerdy Bird, that you took over chat as I'm wrapping up. It is not because of you. I really meant for this to be like a 10 to 15 minute video, just to get out that whatever stupid idea I had at the beginning. And then it turned into all this nonsense. So this is much more of my rambling than today needs already. All right, so on that note, God bless, lunatic love to all.